Picture this. It's a chilly evening in 2004, and I'm sprawled on my couch, a cold soda fizzing in my hand. My tiny stereo humming a classic rock tune so low I can barely hear it over the hum of the fridge. I'm 24, scraping by in a cramped apartment in a rundown 18-unit building. The walls are so thin, I swear I can hear my neighbor's cat sneezing 2 doors down. This place is my escape, my little slice of peace after a long day at my dead-end retail job. But then there's a knock at the door. Loud, sharp, impatient. My heart jumps. I open it, and there they are, 2 cops, flashlights in hand, looking annoyed. Another noise complaint. From her, my next-door neighbor, Evelyn. Again, this wasn't the first time, and it sure wouldn't be the last. But let me tell you, by the end of this story, that old lady got what was coming to her. A hefty fine that left her speechless and me grinning from ear to ear. If you've ever dreamed of serving justice to someone who made your life miserable, hit that like button, subscribe, and buckle up for one of the most satisfying revenge stories you'll ever hear. This is a tale of how I turned the tables on a neighbor from hell. Let's rewind. I moved into this apartment building fresh out of college, try and make ends meet on a paycheck that barely covered rent and ramen. The building was a dump. Peeling paint, flickering hallway lights, and floors that creaked like they were auditioning for a horror movie. But it was home. My little 1-bedroom was my sanctuary, where I could kick back, blast some tunes, and forget about my boss yelling at me for a customer's spilled coffee. Or so I thought. Next door lived Evelyn and Harold, a retired couple in their late 70s. Harold was a quiet guy, always shuffling around in his worn-out slippers, giving me a polite nod when we passed in the hallway. He seemed harmless, like he just wanted to read his newspaper and stay out of trouble. Evelyn, though, she was a different story. Wiry, sharp-eyed, with a voice that could cut through steel. From the day I moved in, I felt her watching me, her beady eyes peering through her peephole every time I stepped into the hall. It was like she decided I was trouble before I even unpacked my boxes. It started innocently enough. About a month after I moved in, I got a knock on my door. I opened it to find Evelyn standing there, arms crossed, lips pursed like she'd just bitten into a rotten apple. "Your music is too loud," she snapped. I was confused. My stereo was set so low I had to strain to hear it. I apologized, turned it down even further, and figured that was the end of it. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. Over the next few months, Evelyn's complaints became a nightmare. Every week or two, there'd be a knock at my door. Sometimes it was her, glaring at me like I was some punk kid throwing a rave. Other times, it was the police. Yeah, the police. She'd call them, claiming I was blasting heavy metal or hosting a party at all hours. The first time they showed up, my stomach dropped. I opened the door, my hand shaking, expecting to be hauled off in cuffs. 2 cops stepped inside, listened to my TV, barely audible over the sound of my neighbor's game show blaring through the wall, and shook their heads. "Sorry, kid," one of them said, scratching his neck. "We have to check every call, but this isn't loud enough to be a problem." They asked me to turn it down anyway, just to keep the peace. I nodded, my cheeks burning with embarrassment, and shut the door. Inside, I was fuming. I could almost picture Evelyn smirking next door, thinking she'd won some kind of power trip. This happened over and over, a dozen times to be exact. One night, I was watching a quiet drama movie, the kind with long pauses and soft dialogue. It was 8 p.m. on a Tuesday, and the cops showed up again. Another time, I was just vacuuming my apartment, vacuuming, when I saw those red and blue lights flashing through my window. My heart raced every time I heard that knock. I started to feel like a prisoner in my own home. I turned my music off completely, stopped inviting friends over because they didn't want to deal with the drama, and even started tiptoeing around my apartment like a thief. My life was shrinking, and Evelyn was loving every second of it. What made it worse was her attitude. Whenever I saw her in the hallway, she'd shoot me this smug, triumphant look, like she was a queen of the building and I was just a peasant. One day, I overheard her talking to another neighbor in the laundry room. "That boy next door thinks he can disturb us old folks with his noise," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "I'll teach him a lesson." My blood boiled. I wasn't some delinquent. I was a guy working 40 hours a week, paying my rent, trying to live my life. But to Evelyn, I was the enemy, and she was on a mission to make me miserable. I tried to reason with her once. Big mistake. I knocked on her door one afternoon, my palms sweaty, hoping to clear the air. She opened the door just a crack, her eyes narrowing. "What do you want?" she barked. I took a deep breath and said, "Evelyn, I'm trying to keep things quiet. The cops keep saying my music isn't loud. Can we talk about this?" She scoffed, her lips curling into a sneer. "You young people have no respect. Keep it down or I'll keep calling." Then she slammed the door in my face. I stood there, my fists clenched, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. That's when I knew reasoning wasn't going to work. She wasn't just annoyed, she was out for control. The worst part? I was starting to worry about my lease. What if the landlord got tired of complaints and decided I was more trouble than I was worth? I couldn't afford to move. My job barely covered my bills, and I was already eating instant noodles 3 nights a week. The thought of losing my apartment made my chest tighten, like a weight was pressing down on me. I felt powerless, trapped in a game I didn't want to play. But I wasn't going to let Evelyn win. One Friday night, after the 12th police visit, I hit my breaking point. It had been a brutal day at work. A customer had screamed at me for something I didn't do. My boss docked my pay for being 5 minutes late, and my paycheck was already spent on rent and groceries. All I wanted was to relax with some music and a pizza. I'd set my stereo to the lowest setting, so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat over the cords. Then bang, another knock. 2 cops, same old routine. They checked my apartment, confirmed it was quiet, and left with a tired, "Try to keep it down, okay?" I stood in my living room, my fists balled so tight my knuckles turned white. My heart was pounding, my throat tight with anger. I could almost hear Evelyn cackling next door, proud of herself for ruining my night again. That's when something snapped inside me. I was done being her punching bag, done feeling like a criminal in my own home, done letting her control my life. I wasn't going to yell or bang on her door or crank my music to spite her. No, I was going to be smarter than that. I was going to make her regret ever picking up that phone. The next morning, I woke up with a fire in my gut. I wasn't just angry, I was determined. I started thinking about all those police visits. Every single time, the cops had said my volume wasn't loud enough to justify a complaint. So why were they showing up? Because Evelyn kept calling, wasting their time with baseless accusations. That's when a light bulb went off in my head. Could she get in trouble for that? I mean, there had to be some kind of consequence for dragging police to my door over nothing, right? This was 2004, so I didn't have Google or a smartphone to help me out. But I had a clunky desktop computer and a dial-up connection that screeched like a banshee. I spent hours hunched over my keyboard. The screen's glow burned in my eyes as I scrolled through city ordinances and police department websites. My coffee went cold, but I didn't care. I was on a mission. Finally, I found a section on false reporting. In my city, repeatedly making unfounded complaints to the police could be considered harassment or misuse of emergency services. Penalties included fines, sometimes hefty ones, depending on how many calls were made. My heart skipped a beat. This was it, my weapon. But I needed to be sure. I didn't want to just assume, I wanted to know. So, the next time the cops showed up, call number 13, because of course everyone wasn't done, I was ready. They did their usual check, confirmed my music was practically a whisper, and turned to leave. I took a deep breath, my pulse racing, and said, "Officers, can I ask you something? Is there a law against someone calling you guys out here for no reason? Over and over? Like, could they get in trouble for wasting your time?" The 2 cops exchanged a glance, and I could see the gears turning. The older one, a grizzled guy with a mustache and tired eyes, raised an eyebrow. "Well," he said, his voice slow and deliberate, "if someone's making repeated false reports, that could be considered harassment. We need to look into it. But yeah, there could be consequences." He didn't say much more, but the way he nodded told me I'd hit a nerve. They were sick of these calls, too. I could see it in their slumped shoulders, the way they sighed as they walked back to their cruiser. I didn't push it further. I didn't want to seem like I was fishing for trouble, but I planted the seed. I thanked him, closed the door, and stood there, a slow grin spreading across my face. For the first time in months, I felt like I had the upper hand. All I had to do was wait. Weeks passed, and something strange happened. The knock stopped. No cops. No Evelyn banging on my door. No smug glares in the hallway. At first, I thought maybe she'd given up. Maybe she'd realized her complaints were pointless. But deep down, I knew better. Evelyn wasn't the type to back down. She was probably just biding her time, plotting her next move. So I kept my guard up, my stereo off, my life on mute. Then, one morning, I ran into Mike, the janitor, in the hallway. Mike was a gruff, no-nonsense guy who'd been cleaning this building longer than I'd been alive. He was sweeping the floor, muttering about tenants leaving trash everywhere. When he spotted me, "Hey, kid," he said, leaning on his broom with a grin. "You hear about your neighbor? The old lady next door?" My stomach did a flip. "Evelyn? No, what happened?" Mike chuckled, a low, gravelly sound that echoed in the empty hallway. "She got herself in some hot water. Kept calling the cops on you, right? Well, turns out the police weren't too happy about it. They slapped her with a fine, a big one, something about wasting their time with false complaints. She's been whining about it to anyone who'll listen." My jaw dropped. My heart felt like it was doing cartwheels. "A fine? How much?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Mike shrugged, his grin widening. "Didn't say exactly, but from the way she was carrying on, it sounds like it hurt. A lot." He gave me a knowing look, like he was in on the secret. Guess she learned her lesson. I stood there, stunned, as Mike went back to sweeping. A laugh bubbled up in my chest, but I held it in until I got back to my apartment. As soon as my door closed, I let it out, a full-on, fist-pumping victory dance laugh. I could picture Evelyn opening that fine notice, her smug face crumpling as she read the amount. I imagined her pacing her apartment, muttering to Harold about how unfair it was, how she was just trying to keep the building respectable. For the first time in months, I felt free, like I could breathe again, like I'd won. I never saw the police at my door again. Evelyn avoided me in the hallway after that, her usual glare replaced by a tight-lipped scowl. Once, I caught her eye as we passed, and I swear I saw a flicker of fear. She knew I'd beaten her at her own game. And let me tell you, that felt better than any song on my stereo ever could. Looking back, this whole thing taught me something. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't loud or flashy. It's quiet, calculated, and uses the system to fight back. Evelyn thought she could control me, make my life miserable just because she felt like it. But in the end, her own actions came back to bite her. Karma doesn't always need a helping hand. It just needs a little nudge. If this story gave you chills, smash that like button and drop a comment below. What's the most satisfying revenge you've ever witnessed? Or maybe you got a neighbor like Evelyn who got what they deserved. Let us know. We're dying to hear your stories. And if you want more tales of justice served with a side of karma, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next.